Hollywood, where dreams are made, where ordinary people can rise to fame. But this is also the place where legends are forged through sweat, tears, and endless controversies. Today, we dive deep into the turbulent journey of one of Hollywood's greatest icons, Charlton Heston, a hero on screen, a warrior in real life, but also one of the most controversial figures in Hollywood history. Join me as we explore the life of the man who changed the course of cinema history. Childhood, entering the world of cinema. Born on October 4th, 1923, in the small town of Evanston, Illinois, Charlton Heston entered a world in turmoil. The United States was reeling from the effects of the Great Depression. The Roaring Twenties had ended, and now families struggled to make ends meet. For the young boy named John Charles Carter, life would never be easy. His parents' marriage crumbled when he was just a child, and he found himself in the middle of a broken home. His father, struggling with his own demons, left the family, and Heston's mother, struggling to keep them afloat, moved them to Michigan. It was there that young John would find his escape in the world of cinema. Raised by his strong-willed mother, Heston developed an early fascination with the arts. As a teenager, he was a shy, quiet boy, often lost in books and movies. But there was something magical about the silver screen that captivated him. Even in an era when Hollywood was still evolving, he could see something larger than life unfolding before his eyes. He began to dream, to imagine a future where he could stand in front of a camera, commanding attention just as the great actors of the time did. His first real taste of the stage came during his high school years, where he started performing in plays at the local theater. It wasn't long before he realized the stage was where he truly belonged. In fact, his high school drama teacher would become one of the first to recognize his raw potential and encouraged him to pursue acting professionally. Heston's love for theater grew stronger by the day, and he began to take every opportunity to refine his craft. After graduating from high school, Heston enrolled at Northwestern University, where he majored in drama. It was here that his talent would begin to shine. In the halls of Northwestern, he honed his skills, and under the guidance of some of the best teachers of the time, his abilities began to flourish. His performances in campus productions earned him recognition, not just for his powerful voice, but for his commanding presence and his ability to bring characters to life in a way few others could. While his peers were still figuring out their paths, Heston's destiny seemed all but sealed. He became known for his intense, almost methodical approach to acting. He studied the greats, from Marlon Brando to John Barrymore, learning how to harness his emotions and channel them into his performances. But it was in the heart of Chicago, at the famous Goodman Theater, where Heston would make his professional debut that would change the course of his life forever. With a fierce determination and a dream too big for any small town, Heston knew his future lay in Hollywood. His big break came in 1941, when he was just 18. A fortunate meeting with a talent scout led to a contract with Columbia Pictures. But despite his towering presence, he faced the harsh reality of Hollywood's competitive nature. His early days were not as glamorous as the silver screen made them seem. For every audition that led to a role, there were countless more that left him empty-handed. But Heston was undeterred. He refused to let the rejection define him. In the early years, he appeared in a string of minor roles, mostly uncredited parts that barely left a mark. Yet each one was a lesson, each one pushing him closer to greatness. His first major screen appearance came in 1950 when he starred in The Greatest Show on Earth, a Cecil B. DeMille-directed circus epic. Though his role was minor, the film itself was a huge success and earned Heston the attention of Hollywood insiders. But it was in 1952 when the world would truly begin to take notice. He landed a leading role in The Snows of Kilimanjaro, alongside Gregory Peck and Ava Gardner. Suddenly, Heston wasn't just another face in the crowd, he was a star on the rise. As his career began to take off, it didn't take long for Hollywood to recognize his remarkable ability to bring epic characters to life. And in 1956, the world would meet a new kind of hero, one who would redefine the term larger than life. Heston's portrayal of Moses in the Ten Commandments would become his defining moment, a role that catapulted him into the stratosphere of Hollywood fame. The heights of his career. Charlton Heston was no longer just a rising star. He was a force of nature in Hollywood, a man whose presence could fill a screen and whose voice could command entire armies. It was a rare combination that set him apart from his peers and made him one of the most sought-after actors in the industry. The year was 1956, and director Cecil B. DeMille saw in Heston a man who could embody the very spirit of a biblical hero. In the Ten Commandments, Heston portrayed the legendary Moses, a leader who would challenge the very foundations of an empire. With the power to move mountains and part seas, Heston's portrayal of Moses was nothing short of monumental. It wasn't just his appearance, strong, commanding, noble, but his deep understanding of the role, his ability to portray a man struggling with the weight of divine destiny that captivated audiences around the world. Perhaps the most iconic image from the Ten Commandments is that scene, the parting of the Red Sea. Heston's Moses, staff raised, ordering the sea to divide. It's an image burned into the collective memory of millions. The scene was a masterpiece of both filmmaking and performance, and it was all done without the magic of modern CGI. The spectacle was achieved using traditional filmmaking techniques, massive sets, a meticulous attention to detail, and of course, Heston's unwavering dedication to the role. The film was a worldwide box office hit, and Charlton Heston was no longer just a star, he was an icon. 2 years later, Heston would define what it meant to be a true cinematic legend. 1959 brought the epic Ben-Hur, where Heston portrayed Judah Ben-Hur, a prince betrayed and sent into slavery, who rises up for revenge. The chariot race scene, one of the most thrilling sequences ever filmed, became a hallmark of cinema. And what most viewers didn't realize is that Charlton Heston performed many of the stunts himself. No digital effects, no stunt doubles. It was just Heston, in all his glory, pushing his physical limits for the sake of realism. He was truly living the role, not just acting in it. That chariot race, with its breathtaking speed, drama, and intensity, went on to become one of the most famous sequences in film history. Filming it was grueling, and Heston's dedication was remarkable. He spent months preparing for the race, learning how to control the chariot and navigate its dangerous turns. In fact, it's said that the production went through several chariots and horses before finally getting the shot they wanted. But Heston, never one to shy away from a challenge, gave everything he had to make it perfect. And the results spoke for themselves. Ben-Hur became one of the highest-grossing films of all time and won a record 11 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Actor for Heston. It cemented his status as one of Hollywood's most prominent figures. But Heston was never one to rest on his laurels. By the late 1960s, he was looking for new challenges. And in 1968, he stepped into the role that would make him a science fiction legend, Planet of the Apes. This was a departure from the grand biblical epics and historical dramas that had defined his early career. But as George Taylor, the astronaut stranded on a world ruled by apes, Heston brought his signature intensity to the part. In a movie that was, on the surface, a sci-fi action film, Heston managed to infuse his character with depth, vulnerability, and frustration. One of the most unforgettable lines in cinematic history came from this very film. "Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape." It's a line that still resonates with fans, not just for its boldness, but for the way Heston delivered it, raw, angry, and defiant. Planet of the Apes was not just a box office success, it became a cultural phenomenon, and Heston's role as the man fighting for his life in an alien world was one of the most memorable performances of his career. The film's ending, with its twist of the destroyed Statue of Liberty, left audiences stunned. The powerful, emotional final shot, with Heston standing alone on the beach, delivered one of the most impactful statements on the human condition ever captured on film. It was a perfect blend of action, science fiction, and social commentary. Another example of how Charlton Heston was always more than just an action hero. But Heston's range didn't stop there. Over the next few decades, he continued to work across a wide range of genres, proving that he could tackle nearly any role. Whether it was a politician in The Agony and the Ecstasy, a detective in Touch of Evil, or a soldier in The Omega Man, Heston demonstrated his versatility and fearlessness in approaching any character. Through it all, Heston remained an actor of remarkable presence. Even in the later years of his career, when the world had changed around him, he still commanded respect. His ability to play complex characters, each with their own motivations, struggles, and triumphs, was unmatched. Whether he was leading armies, battling apes, or taking on roles in action-packed films, Charlton Heston was, and would remain, one of the greatest stars Hollywood had ever known. Scandals and controversies. Charlton Heston was not just a legend of the silver screen. He was a polarizing figure whose personal beliefs and public actions often sparked intense debate. While he captured audiences with his powerful performances, the man behind the roles was equally as captivating, though not always for the right reasons. Behind the heroics and grandeur of his on-screen persona, Heston became embroiled in some of Hollywood's most controversial and divisive moments. One of the first controversies to arise in Heston's life came in the 1960s, during a time when America was deeply divided over civil rights. Despite playing the role of an epic hero, Heston became known for his outspoken views on politics and race. And it was his involvement in the civil rights movement that would first show the complexities of his character. In the early 1960s, at the height of the civil rights movement, Heston shocked many when he publicly supported African American rights. In 1963, he attended the famous March on Washington, marching alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as one of the few prominent white figures to participate. Heston's support for racial equality was not just symbolic. He was there, in the trenches, marching for justice and human rights. He famously said, "I have never been afraid to stand up for what I believe in, regardless of the consequences." For many, this was a bold statement of solidarity during a deeply polarized time. However, Heston's public support of civil rights didn't protect him from controversy. In the years following, his political views would take a sharp turn that would set him at odds with many of his former allies. As the 1970s and 1980s unfolded, Heston's support for conservative causes became increasingly pronounced, and it was this shift that caused a major divide. In 1977, Heston took on a new role, one that would define the latter part of his public life: the president of the National Rifle Association, NRA. Heston, whose roles often portrayed figures of power and control, now found himself championing gun rights. What began as a fight for personal freedom and Second Amendment rights quickly escalated into a nationwide debate. The NRA, under Heston's leadership, took a far more aggressive stance, lobbying for less gun control and pushing for the rights of Americans to carry firearms with fewer restrictions. The NRA became more than just a political group. It became a platform for Heston's most impassioned speeches. His famous 2000 speech, in which he held up a rifle and declared, "From my cold, dead hands," became a rallying cry for gun rights advocates. But this didn't sit well with everyone. Heston's increasingly radical stance on guns made him a target for liberals, media figures, and Hollywood elites who saw him as a dangerous influence on American society. While Heston's defenders saw him as a champion of freedom, his critics viewed him as a symbol of the nation's growing polarization on issues of gun violence. In the aftermath of tragic shootings, Heston's speeches only seemed to fuel the fire of debate. It wasn't just his views on gun control that caused a rift. His outspoken political stance made him a figure many could not ignore, and for many, not in a positive light. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Charlton Heston's image was no longer simply that of an actor. He had become a full-fledged political figure. For the public, it was hard to separate the heroic figures he had once portrayed from the man standing before them, espousing deeply divisive views. His political and social views became just as famous as his acting roles, and not everyone was happy about it. Many of Heston's colleagues in Hollywood were appalled by his political turn. Hollywood had long been a haven for liberal ideals, and Heston, once celebrated by his peers, found himself increasingly isolated. Some actors and directors openly distanced themselves from him, criticizing his support of the NRA and his controversial stances on issues like the Vietnam War and abortion. The backlash wasn't just limited to the entertainment industry. The public's reaction was mixed, and many felt betrayed by Heston's transformation from a champion of civil rights to a staunch conservative figure. His involvement with the NRA and his radical defense of gun ownership were too much for some to overlook, even considering his storied career in film. While his political views were creating waves, Heston's personal life also became a topic of scrutiny. In the 1980s, Heston's marriage to his wife, Lydia Clark, which had spanned decades, came under pressure as the actor's life became more public. But despite facing rumors and the pressures of Hollywood life, Heston remained committed to his family and his wife. Though not as heavily covered as his political life, Heston's family life remained relatively stable, and he continued to live a public life with dignity. But in 2002, a personal tragedy struck. Heston was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. His memory, which had once helped him craft some of the most powerful performances in Hollywood, began to fade. Heston bravely continued to appear in public, even as his battle with the disease intensified. But the man who had once been larger than life was now dealing with one of the most devastating afflictions a person could face. In the end, Charlton Heston was a man whose life was defined as much by controversy as by his cinematic achievements. While his career may have spanned decades of unforgettable roles, his public persona remained a battleground between his supporters and critics. For some, he was a hero on screen and a defender of freedom off-screen. For others, he was a symbol of everything wrong with America's politics. No matter where you stand, it's clear that Heston left an indelible mark on history. And when he passed away in 2008, after a long and valiant battle with Alzheimer's, Hollywood lost one of its greatest stars. But the debates, the controversies, and the memories of Charlton Heston remain etched in the collective consciousness of America. Charlton Heston's career is one that will forever be remembered for its monumental achievements. From his unforgettable portrayal of Moses in the Ten Commandments to the epic chariot race in Ben-Hur, he captivated audiences with his larger-than-life performances. But as time passed and Hollywood evolved, Heston's legacy grew increasingly complicated. His contributions to film, his advocacy, and his personal struggles would continue to define him even long after his passing in 2008. Despite the controversies that surrounded him, Charlton Heston's impact on Hollywood remained undeniable. He won an Academy Award for Best Actor in 1960 for his role in Ben-Hur, solidifying his place in the pantheon of cinematic greats. Ben-Hur was not just a victory for Heston, but for Hollywood itself, a film that became a benchmark for epic storytelling, grand scale, and raw emotion. Yet it wasn't just the accolades and awards that cemented his legacy. It was his tireless dedication to the craft of acting, his commitment to playing characters who were often larger than life, and his uncanny ability to portray the heroes and anti-heroes of the ages. Throughout his career, Charlton Heston was not just an actor, but a symbol of strength, resilience, and the power of storytelling. His characters were warriors, leaders, and kings, and Heston himself embodied these ideals. But it wasn't just his characters that resonated with audiences. It was the very essence of who he was. A man who stood firm in his beliefs, unafraid to voice his opinions, even if it meant sacrificing friendships and connections along the way. He was unapologetic, a man who felt his voice mattered as much off-screen as it did on. While his political views became a source of division, they were also part of what made him such a compelling figure. Charlton Heston was a man who believed in personal freedom, and his advocacy for the Second Amendment was a cornerstone of his later years. However, it's important to remember that Heston's contributions went beyond politics. He was a humanitarian, a philanthropist, and a passionate advocate for the arts. His deep love for the craft of acting never waned, even in the face of personal struggle. As he entered his 80s, Heston's personal life became overshadowed by his battle with Alzheimer's disease. The man who had once played characters with unwavering determination and clarity now found himself fighting a different battle, one that was deeply personal. In 2002, Heston publicly announced that he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, a moment that shook the entertainment world. Here was a man who had once stood as a towering figure, and now he was being slowly consumed by a disease that erased memories and abilities. Despite the challenges, Heston faced his illness with the same strength and courage that defined his entire life. He continued to attend events, give speeches, and participate in interviews as long as he could. His family stood by him during these difficult years, offering support, and his wife Lydia remained his rock through it all. In one of his final interviews, he spoke about the legacy he hoped to leave behind, not just as an actor, but as someone who lived a life full of passion and conviction. His voice may have faded, but the spirit that defined Charlton Heston was unmistakable. Charlton Heston passed away on April 5, 2008, at the age of 84. The world lost a true cinematic giant, a man who had played some of the most heroic characters ever seen on screen. But his death was not just the end of an era in film. It was the end of a life that had been defined by both greatness and controversy. In his passing, he left behind a legacy of unforgettable performances, but also a complex political and personal story that would continue to provoke discussion for years to come. Though Heston's death marked the closing of a chapter in Hollywood, his legacy continues to endure. From his roles in biblical epics to sci-fi classics like Planet of the Apes, his performances have become immortal. Heston's name is still synonymous with some of the most powerful cinematic moments in history. His ability to convey deep emotional struggles, his magnetic screen presence, and his unforgettable voice have left an indelible mark on the world of cinema. Even as time passes, his characters live on. Moses, Ben-Hur, George Taylor, and countless others. They are the heroes who never fade, who remain etched in the memory of generations of moviegoers. His influence stretches beyond the screen, from his work with the NRA to his outspoken political advocacy, proving that Charlton Heston was more than just a star. He was a symbol of the American spirit in both its grandeur and its flaws. As we reflect on the life and legacy of Charlton Heston, we're reminded that he was a man of contradictions, a man whose greatness on screen was often matched by his divisive presence off it. But one thing remains clear. Heston was a man who lived with purpose, fought for his beliefs, and left a mark on the world that will never be erased. Charlton Heston's story is not just a tale of fame and fortune. It's a story of struggle, of triumph, and of a man who gave everything for his craft. In an era where larger-than-life figures were defined by their on-screen personas, Heston's personal life, his controversies, and his unwavering commitment to his beliefs added layers to a man who will never be forgotten. His final years may have been clouded by illness, but the heroism that he portrayed on screen remains as vibrant as ever. Charlton Heston may have left this world, but his legacy, his spirit, lives on in every film he touched, in every performance he gave, and in every speech he made. And for that, he will always be remembered. So, what do you think of Charlton Heston? Was he a hero or a controversial figure? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more thrilling stories from Hollywood.